Hello, Scoob Believers, and welcome to episode 93 of the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. And it's me, Scoob, coming at you at whatever device you happen to be listening on. First of all, I want to say a great big thank you to anybody that's been listening to my podcast. I really appreciate you. We're almost to 100, and I just want to dedicate everything to y'all that's been listening so far. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your life to listen to the Undiscovered Entrepreneur, and hopefully you learned something from everything that we've talked about today. All right, that being said, today's entrepreneur is John. Now, John's not your typical entrepreneur that we normally talk about. He is a quite seasoned entrepreneur, but he is amazing. From marketing and advertising industry to the pharmaceutical industry, and eventually finding his passion in the eye care business, John's entrepreneur path has been marked by many pivots and much resilience. Now, as the president of Texas State Optical, John has transformed the company from a franchise model to a brand licensing business, and we're going to talk about the differences between those two, so don't worry about that. Helping young optometrists establish their own independent practices. John shares insights on how he navigated personal and professional setbacks, emphasizing the importance of self-reflection, adaptability, and positive mindset in entrepreneurial success. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to John. Salutations, Scoob Believers, and we are here again with another amazing entrepreneur. Today we're here with John. Hey, John, how's it going?
It's going right there, Scoob.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the Undiscovered Entrepreneur, getting across the start line. I really appreciate you.
You bet. It's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you. All right, so before we do anything, I do have one kind of semi-serious question to ask you. Okay, are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Are you a Scoob believer?
I am. I am a Scoob believer.
All right, John. Thank you so much for being a Scoob believer. I super appreciate
You
you.
bet.
All right, so right here at the very beginning, what I like to do is get an idea of who you are, what your entrepreneur adventure is, and how you got across the start line in your entrepreneur adventure.
Okay. My name's John Marvin, and I started a career out of college in the marketing and advertising industry. And for various reasons, a number of reasons, chose to veer off of that path and go more into marketing and ended up in a pharmaceutical company and pursuing a marketing career path in that. And ultimately, that led to a decision I had to make to move from the Midwest in Kansas to Chicago. And I chose not to do that. So I ended up getting into the eye care business in the early 80s. And that kind of led me into an opportunity down in Houston, Texas. And that's where I live today. And as I got to Houston and was continued in the eye care business, I had an opportunity to branch out on my own and start a marketing research, consumer research, and marketing management company. And that was really the core of my academic training, as well as my real passion and interest was the consumer and what they believed or felt about products and their reaction to different campaigns and advertising messages. And so that led me to an organization in Southeast Texas that became a client of mine called Texas State Optical. And I worked with them for about 10 years and mainly with the franchisees of the company at that time. I helped them set up a franchise association so that they could work more effectively with the franchisor. Towards the end of the 90s, I had an opportunity to help them negotiate the acquisition of that company. So the franchisees were negotiating to purchase the franchisor. And because I was the business guy and not an optometrist, I got invited to help be a part of that. And as we were closing in on finishing that deal up, I was given an opportunity to come on board as the new president of the company. And one of the things that attracted me to it was that it it really gave me an entrepreneur opportunity within the context of a corporation that, because it was, the nature of it was such that I pretty much had free reign in terms of decision making, and I reported to a board of directors, but it was largely a board of directors that I got to construct and help identify in those early days. And I've been president since 2001. And in that, we reshaped the company away from a franchisor relationship to a brand license company, given the strength of the Texas State Optical brand, which was started in 1936. So it had a rich history and legacy in Texas. And so it really gave us a chance to remake it. And what appealed to me, Scoob, at the time was that it was the ultimate fixer-upper, and I really had a lot of latitude in going about doing that. And so today, 23 years later, we have really remade the organization, and today it's an exciting opportunity for a young optometrist to be able to go out and open their own practice and take advantage of a lot of the structure that might come from a corporate type of organization, but it's really their independent private practice using our brand name for credibility, awareness, familiarity among consumers. And so I spend my day helping young independent optometrists run their small business and learn about what's necessary to be a successful entrepreneur.
That's amazing. If we have any want to be optometrists out there looking to start their own business,
Mhm.
John's your guy there. So we'll
I
keep that
am.
in mind if
I
you're out
am.
there.
Make
So
you rich and famous.
that's awesome. So you say a lot of things. I think the one thing that really sticks out on my mind most is you did a lot of pivots. There's a lot of pivots from one
Mhm,
thing to another thing to another thing to another thing
mhm,
that
mhm,
ultimately got you to where you are now, where you are today, and being
mhm.
a successful entrepreneur. Can you give us a little advice about pivoting and what to look out for and know when to pivot?
I think it starts with the importance of understanding where it is you want to go. And if you understand where it is you want to go, then you can consider different vehicles to get you there. And so I looked at it like that. Out of the advertising business, I decided to switch vehicles and pursue the eye care business. But I always knew where I wanted to end up, and that was ultimately running an organization myself and being in charge of. And so I was able to switch vehicles when I got into the eye care business, and then I had an opportunity to really pursue with this client the marketing research and consumer vehicle at that time. It brought me closer to where I wanted to be, and always with a sense of faith. I think that's extremely important. You got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in it where you want to go, and then you can begin to more effectively evaluate the different vehicles that can take you there, and not be afraid to switch and in your turn pivot. And I never really pivoted from the standpoint of I want to be a fireman, but now I want to be a cowboy. And I didn't do that. What I did was I knew where I wanted to end up, and then I kept looking for the opportunities to present themselves that I thought would bring me closer to where I wanted to be. And so I think that that's important. You got to keep your eye open and believe there's always another opportunity as you go down, and also understand when the vehicle you're currently in is running out of gas. I'm stretching this metaphor a little bit, but when you go, okay, I've come to the end of this. Now, where else can I go? What other opportunity and doors open that I can walk through and pursue from that way?
Fantastic. The one thing that I talk about a lot in my podcast is fear and the different types of fears that we have as
Mhm,
entrepreneurs as we go along. And you make a good point. Don't fear the pivot, I think is what really stuck
mhm,
out in my mind there. Yeah, it's hard, it's difficult, it's something that we're not used to, and we're going into something we don't know 100% what we're actually getting into, but we feel in our heart of hearts this is the way we need to go. But don't
mhm,
fear back, don't hold back from that because you can be missing out on something that's really important to you in your life. So make sure if you have that opportunity to pivot and you know it's time to pivot, you feel that it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the term fear, because this is something I believe deeply in, and that is fear is not real. Fear is imagined. Because if you think about it, the only thing you can fear is something that hasn't yet happened. And the only way you can perceive that it might happen is to imagine it might happen. So fear is really all in your imagination. And if you begin to believe in yourself and believe in the opportunity, you can change the way you think. And I'm a big believer in this, that the only thing we have total control over is the way that we think. And if you can recognize that fear is simply a part of your imagination, then you can change that. And instead of being fearful, you can become excited. You can anticipate great things happening, not be concerned all the time about something bad happening. And that's totally within our control.
Yeah, fear and excitement actually come from the same part of our brain.
That's right.
So why don't we change the wording of fear into excitement and have it something to be positive for us, something for us to look forward to? And I'm gonna ask you because I always ask this, but I think you're gonna get this
Mhm.
question. But do you know the acronym for fear?
You mean false evidence appearing real?
Woo! Yay, ladies and gentlemen, we finally got somebody that knows what it is. I've been
I
asking
told
that
you I was
question
a
for a
SCU
long time.
believer.
What's
I
that?
said I was a SCU
Yeah,
believer.
you sure are. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Oh, I feel so validated.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. It's not something. It's not a saber-toothed tiger that's going to bite you in the rear end. It's something that happens in our head, and what we do with that information makes us who we are and helps us make the decision. So that's amazing. I'm curious. I'm going to go back just a little bit here,
Okay.
and you were talking about franchising and brand licensing. Can you give me a
Mhm.
quick synopsis of the difference between the two?
Sure. First of all, franchising. Franchising is the opportunity to adopt, pay for an operational system, a way of doing things. If you think about all of the franchises that you and I've come across, whether they be food or service industries, what the person purchasing the franchise is really purchasing is an operational system. We buy a Subway franchise because they make sandwiches. And what we're doing is we don't buy a Subway franchise and decide, you know what? I think pickles and tacos would make a much better menu than Subway sandwiches. What we do is we buy their operational system. And for that, we pay a royalty. And typically, there's an advertising contribution required to help promote the brand. A brand license company is a company that owns a brand that has intrinsic value in it from a consumer perspective. I think one of the best examples is Disney. Disney makes a large majority of their corporate revenues from licensing the use of the Disney brand, whether it be toys or food products or lunch boxes, things like this. They aren't involved in the operational creation of the product that is using that brand. They're only involved in protecting, building value in the brand, and then licensing to other people. Ferrari is another example. Ferrari makes 80% of all the revenue of the corporate Ferrari, not from cars. They establish the brand value through the cars, but they license the use of it to apparel and accessories and things like this. And so there's a big difference. A brand license company focuses on the value of the brand that they are licensing to others to use, but we're not involved in the operational control of the, in our case, optometry practices. We can give guidance, we give direction, but if they want to operate a certain way, as long as it's legal and moral, then we're okay with that. A franchise company is not. A franchise company says you've got to be open these hours, you've got to sell these products, you've got to do it in the way that we want it done. And that's the biggest difference.
Fantastic. I just wanted to get those definitions out there.
Hmm.
Obviously I've heard of franchising, but I've never heard of how brand licensing actually works. So I really appreciate you going
Hmm.
that over.
Sure.
All right. So since my audience is mainly new entrepreneurs that are just getting started
Hmm.
in their entrepreneurial adventure, what do you think actually holds most entrepreneurs back from getting across the start line in their entrepreneurial adventure?
I want to make sure I understand the question. So if you could elaborate a little bit on holding them back from getting across the start line. What do
Absolutely.
you mean by that?
So a lot of us have these ideas, they have these wants to start a business, but
Okay.
there's always that one thing that holds them back. Now, normally what I do is I go over the four hurdles of stop, which is imposter syndrome, perfectionism, failure, and fear. Now, I know there's
Yeah.
other ones out there, and that's why I try to get a variety of what most people, most new entrepreneurs, I'm trying to say this right,
Hmm.
what most experienced entrepreneurs see in other entrepreneurs that's stopping them from getting across the start line. In other words, starting their business. So, what do you see most commonly when it comes to start a new person starting a new business?
I don't have a term for it, but I can describe it. And that
Okay.
is the belief that you have to know everything before you can get started. You've heard things like, you don't have to be great to get started, but you do have to start to get great. And I have a friend who, for his profession, what he does is he leads people on expeditions up Mount Everest.
Hmm.
And when I first met him and I learned what he did, I found it fascinating because if if someone decides I want to climb Mount Everest, then and goes to him for help, they have to, in the beginning, they commit to a 2 year training program. 2 years and about $300,000 is what it's going to cost. And then he takes them on a training process to prepare to climb Mount Everest. And he's got a saying that I just love, and that is, you learn how to climb mountains by climbing mountains. And I think that entrepreneurism the same. You don't have to be great to get started, but you do have to start to get accomplished. And what you learn in the doing is what creates the expertise. And the idea that I have to be perfect at this or I have to know everything about it to get started is what holds a lot of people back. And the reality is, you're going to fail a tremendous amount of times as you go down this journey. But if you're really committed, then that failing becomes education and learning. And you just keep going and you keep every day, you take more steps towards it. And I would just encourage anybody, get started. Get started. If you think you want to run a business that's in the entertainment industry or in entertainment, whether it's a putt-putt golf course or some other type of local small business, get started. Because if that turns out, you can always change and do something else. And the one thing you don't have to worry about is money. Because as long as you're passionate about what you want to do, the money will find you. It's the people that want the money but aren't willing to go through the growth and the personal growth that's necessary to deliver that expertise and therefore the money. So just get started and learn from the mistakes you make.
And that's the most important thing too. And I just can't reiterate so much about how important it is just to do something to get across the start line, whether it's just read a
Mhm.
book, whether it's just to talk to somebody like John here or
Mhm.
something. No matter
Mhm.
how small it is, it's going to make a difference eventually, one way, shape, or form for yourself and for your business. And it's so important not to follow the money, but follow the passion, follow
That's
what
right.
you love, follow your zone of genius, because that's going to be your driving force and going forward, but still not making monetary difference. The
Mhm.
monetary difference will come later. Right now, concentrate on
Mhm.
knowing what you love to do and what your next step is to accomplish what it is that you love to do.
That's right. Malcolm Gladwell's got a book called The Outliers. And in that, he talks about requiring 10,000 hours of doing anything to develop expertise in it. And those first 2,000 hours are going to be filled with a lot of frustration and a lot of failure. But having done what I do for as long as I've done it, I can attest to the fact that there comes a point that the uphill climb seems almost to flip, where you get so confident and knowledgeable about what it is you do that takes you to another level of understanding, which leads you to more confidence, to lead you to more action and activity. And but you got to hang in there. There were a lot of times back in the early 2000s and 90s where I would go home at night going, what the heck am I doing? I mean, you just question it, but you wake up the next day and you keep pursuing it, you keep following it, and eventually you become an expert. You develop expertise. I don't really like the term expert, but you develop expertise. I do believe that.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Thank you so much for that, John. That's some awesome
Sure.
information. Everybody keep that. And that book, Outliers, we'll have that in the show notes in case anybody wants to take a look at that book that John's
It's a
talking
great
about
book.
there.
It's a
Yes.
great book.
So when you were first getting started, I knew you came a long ways from where you're at because you pivoted so many different things. But when you were talking about earlier and the problems that other entrepreneurs were having getting started, did you find yourself going through that same kind of thing, or would your experience a little bit different when you were just getting started?
Yeah, I mean, there were many times that I probably up into my late 30s, early 40s, that I was constantly questioning, is this really what I want to do? Because I was always very aware of the fact that you've only got one runway, really. And what I didn't want to do is end up in my late 50s and early 60s regretting I hadn't done something I really wanted to do. And so that's what kept me focused on constantly, one, being self-aware and always evaluating, is this what I want to do? Is this taking me in a direction that I want my career to be? And by having that always in the forefront of my thoughts helped me stay on track. But yeah, I mean, I mean, I told you I was in the ad business, and then I switched to pharmaceutical, and then I was in the eye care business. So, but oftentimes I would say, is this really what I want to do? And I would have to step back and say, is it getting you closer to where you want to be? Stephen Covey talks about starting with the end in mind. And you've got to sit down and figure out what is it. I think the most difficult thing is deciding what it is you want to do, where you want to be, what you want to accomplish, and and being true to that. A lot of us end up doing things our parents wanted us to do, or our spouse wants us to do, and that's nothing but a formula for misery. You got to sit down and figure out what is it I really want. And I'm a big one of my mentors that I spend a lot of time with is John Maxwell, John C. Maxwell. And he talks about the fact that you've got to be true to your own desire and focus, and spending time and understanding what that is. And self-reflection is an underrated important activity to build time into your day, into your week, into your month, and into your year for structured self-reflection. And I find that to be such a critical aspect of achievement. But one of the things he helped me see is I knew I wanted to do something that made a difference. Okay. And I knew then that I thought about it and I said, I want to do something that makes a difference with other people who want to make a difference. I wanted to be surrounded with other people who were like me, were motivated to make a difference. And then the next phase was for me to understand that I wanted to do something different. Do something that made a difference with people that wanted to make a difference all of us doing something that actually makes a difference. And when I had this opportunity open up to really help young optometrists open up their own practice, one of the team people that I brought on and hired early on, we were sitting around the conference room one day and he said, "What's amazing, John?" And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "We're helping people live their dreams." I mean, our whole focus in what we do is helping that young optometrist live out the dreams that they had when they were sitting in optometry class. And we're helping them educate their children, send their children off to good schools, help them to take good vacations, helping them to drive nice cars, helping them to touch the lives of people in their community. And we're doing that. I mean, we're not the only ones contributing to it, but that's largely what we do. And when you find somebody who has that sparkle in their eye, that they too want to make a difference in their own community, that's the people that we can help the best and help the most. And so that's what is exciting every day, even after doing it all these years. It's exciting to get on the phone or then be in a meeting with a young OD that's just beginning and has their whole career ahead of them. It's pretty amazing.
It's fantastic. And you make a good point where when you touch a life, you're not touching just that one person's life, but you're touching the
No,
life of everybody that that person is going to come into contact with because you are a part of getting them out there and getting them started, getting them across the start line, giving them the tools that they needed to make a difference in everybody else's life that they're going to
right.
touch.
That's
So
right.
and that's how we change the world in our own kind of mind, in our own kind of way. Because your
That's right.
life is going to touch their life, who's going to touch somebody else's life, that's going to touch somebody else's life.
Hmm.
So when you're going through your entrepreneur venture, think about that. Think about what kind of changes you can make, not just in that person's life, but that person's life who has that person's life who has that person's life.
That's right. I mean, at some point, some optometrist that I've helped is going to turn around and change the life of maybe an 8-year old who can't see the blackboard in school. I stood up in front of a group of our organization employees one time and I said, "What is it you do for a living?" And I looked out on the group, there was a couple of hundred of them, and I said, "Think about this. What is it you do for a living?" And I said, if you're at Sunday school class or you're at a cocktail party or you're at a ball game and someone says, "John, what do you do?" What is your answer to those people? And of course, what you might expect came up about, "I'm an optician, I sell glasses, I do this." And I said, "Let me suggest something to you. What you do for a living is you help fathers see their daughters on their wedding day. You help parents see their 5-year-old in their first game of t-ball." I said, "What you really do for a living is you help people see the most important things in their lives. And if it weren't for you, think of how many of those people might not have that experience." And at some point, someone you help is going to help someone that changes their life. And that's a humbling thing to think about, that you're involved on a day-to-day basis with that kind of impact on mankind. I don't think it's hyperbole. I think that if, and certainly if you believe it, you'll make that happen. You will have that kind of impact.
It goes into an analogy I like to talk to about the drill and the hole, where when we're going through our entrepreneur venture, we're at first we want to drill, but the drill, we don't really want the drill. We want the hole that the drill will drill.
That's right.
But let's take that one step further. What are we going to use that hole for?
That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
We're going to use
great.
that hole to hang photos of our family. We're going to use that hole for whatever it is that you want to do to make the memories of whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. That's what we
Mhm.
want. We don't want so much as the whole, but we want what that whole is going to accomplish for us in our lives. And you make a great point in what that was accomplishing for you is being able to see our family, is being able to see and accomplish things that we need to accomplish. So you make
Mhm.
a great point when it comes to that, John.
You wear glasses, I
Well,
can
yeah.
tell. So do I. And so you purchase those glasses. I doubt if you made them yourself. You purchase them from somebody. And I don't know what your vision is, but my guess is you're fairly dependent on those glasses.
Mm,
And so that person that you purchased those glasses from, and the person that made those glasses that sold them to the person that sold them to you, they what they've done is they've created a podcast. I mean, those glasses are necessary for you to do what you're doing. And so I doubt if the person who made the glasses, who sold them to who you bought them from, were thinking about, I'm making a pair of glasses today that will help change the whole world of podcasting because I'm going to help this person bring that to fruition into an audience around the world. Literally, your podcast has got an international reach to it. And so I think you're right. It's not even the whole that we want. It's what the whole represents to us
exactly,
that we want.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, that felt good. Okay, so so you've had a lot of accomplishments up to this point in your career. Do you
Mhm.
have a pitfall that happened to you that you're proud of? This is a stumper for a lot of people where this is like something really bad happened, but I'm glad this bad thing happened because if it wasn't for that bad thing happening, then this positive thing wouldn't happen right after that. Do you ever have anything like that happen to you?
Oh, huh, yeah. We don't have enough time to go through that,
Oh, okay.
but I will point out a couple, and two different unrelated. One was a divorce,
Hmm.
and that's something that a lot of people have experienced. And I know people that their lives were destroyed by what happened through a divorce. But it wasn't the divorce that destroyed the life. It was their reaction to the divorce that
Hmm.
destroyed their life. And had I not gone through that, I wouldn't be married to the woman that I'm married to today and have the kind of life that I have with her and what that's led to in terms of our family. The other, from a career standpoint, is I got fired. And I got fired over a disagreement. I'll put it that way. I don't I don't think what I did merited being fired,
Hmm.
but I got fired. And on my way home from the job that I had been fired from that caused to leave early, I called a couple of clients that I had been working with to explain to them that I will no longer be working with you because I got fired. And both of them said to me, we'd like to work with you anyway. Would you be willing to continue to do the work for us, but do it on a contract basis? And my attitude at the time, my wounded ego, was I got to do something to make some money. And that led to establishing my own business where I started doing consumer research for a large number of clients. But it started with those two and ultimately led me to the group of people at Texas State Optical that my first involvement with them is I did a 2 year large consumer study for them. And so, but again, it wasn't the firing. We're not victims of circumstances. James Allen, great man, wrote a book, As a Man Thinketh. And he talks about circumstances don't create a life, but our reaction to the circumstances create the life. And I really think that that's true. And one of them, again, I'll go back to controlling your mind. One of the most difficult things is to go through an experience like that, and instead of being defeated by it, to force yourself to think, what is the opportunity in this? And really look for that opportunity. I'm a big believer. You find what you look for. You find what you look for. And if you look for disaster and negative consequences and so forth, you're going to find it. But if you force yourself to look for others, things, good things, opportunities, you'll find those as well.
The brain tends to find what you're looking for. And that's just it
Yes,
too. You'll find it, and a good example of that would be if you go out and buy a brand new car and it's red. Suddenly you see all the red cars out there.
that's right. Yeah.
One that actually
Mhm.
happened to me was right after my first son was born. And you get that dad feel like this is my son. Suddenly I'm seeing
Mhm.
babies all over the place.
Yeah.
Places I didn't even think about looking for. Suddenly there's babies all over the place. Since I was the thing that was happened to me at that particular moment, my brain sought out these things that I don't normally look for. So
Yeah.
it's the same thing when we're doing our entrepreneur adventure or anything else. As long as we're looking for that positive thing, we're looking for that one thing. The brain will help us find us. But if you are filling your head with these negative thoughts and these horrible whys and things like that, it's going to find them for you because that's what you're telling your brain to look for.
That's right. That's right. I'm a huge believer in that. And that was molded over the years. And I was first introduced to that by Napoleon Hill
Mm.
and Think and Grow Rich. And my first time I read that book, I thought, oh boy, this is a bunch of just buzz talk. Frankly, I didn't understand it. That's what it was. And over time and revisiting it and having others introduce me to similar beliefs and philosophies, I went back to it. And the second time around, it really changed my whole perspective on things.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those kind of books where you have to listen over. I listen to my books, I don't read them, but I
Mhm.
listen to them a couple times over to start catching the things that I didn't hear the first time around. And
Mhm.
corresponding with the new things that I'm learning, understanding there's a correlation between these two things, then it actually, whoa, this actually is the thing. It does click. Now it makes perfect sense. So that one's definitely in my resources website.
It's the same thing. You've probably heard the saying, you can't step in the same stream twice
Hmm.
because the second time it's a different stream and you're a different person. And it's the same when you read a book the second time. You never really read a book twice. You read because the book speaks to you differently and you're different when you listen, in your case, or I read. So it's the same thing. We're continually learning and growing. Uh, that's another thing I would really encourage entrepreneurs. Decide at the very beginning, I'm going to be a student of life. I'm going to be a continual student, a continual learner. I'm going to have a hunger to always learn more and become better. And that will serve you extremely well.
Fantastic. Keep that on mind, school believers. John's been putting up some great
Mhm.
points there. Take notes. All right, so during the wrap up here, I'd like to do this with all my guests. And in 6 months, I'd like to know what your goals are for you and your company in the next 6 months.
Our company in the industry we're in is facing a lot of challenges because of a very dynamic marketplace. And it isn't just optometry, it's really the whole world of healthcare. And one of the ways I would try to illustrate it for people who aren't really involved in the industry is there was a time back in the 70s. In fact, my very first job was I worked in a drugstore in a small town, and that drugstore was owned by the pharmacist. And pharmacy and drugstores were private owned businesses at that time, often and usually by a pharmacist. And today, you don't see those anymore. Now you go to a Walgreens or a CVS, you don't even see a company like Eckerd's anymore, which used to be a big pharmacy chain. And in the same way, your private practitioner, your pediatrician used to be private practice, old Doc Marvin, and those aren't exist anymore. All the family practices are owned by large medical organizations, and private practice optometry is going through the same kind of evolution, a consolidation. And so I run an organization that's a brand license organization of independent private practices that that mode of practice is being challenged in its existence. And so as an organization, we're having to rethink our entire business model. We're having to think What is it? How do we need to respond to this? Because we certainly don't want to be the very best, but last buggy whip maker in the business. And so we're having to constantly reevaluate our business model and what changes. And that has to really, that's been in development for a couple of years. But like most people, there's a real reluctance to change. And there's a tendency to quickly, immediately, your first response is denial. And that is all caught up with us to the point where in the next 6 to 12 months, we've got to make some changes. We've got to make some hard decisions. And we have to, as an organization, embrace those as opportunities, not threats. And so that's what's happening to us. And I've got a series of meetings over the next 90 days where those decisions have to be made so that we can begin implementing. So a year from now, if you're kind enough to invite me back, I'll have a new chapter in this whole story.
Excuse me. You must have read my mind, John, because that's exactly what my next thing is wanted to say was I usually have my guests back within 6 months to a year to see how they're doing in their business and what's changed in their lives and that thing too. So I'd really like to have you back again in about 6 months. Is that okay?
I'd love that. You bet.
All right. Thank you
Be
so
happy
much.
to.
I'm really excited to see where that goes, especially after
Yeah,
the
me too.
conversation we had today. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
All right, John, this is your time to shine here. This is the time where we want you to advertise yourself. How do we get a hold of you to ask you any questions and all that good stuff? Okay, ready, set, go.
Okay. Probably the easiest way to get a hold of me is my email address and my cell phone. And I'll be bold enough here because with the scuba believer world out there, that my email address is jdmarvin@tso.com. That's JD as in David, Marvin at T as in Tom, S as in Sam, O as in Oscar, TSO.com. My cell phone number is 281-433-1924. And if you want to get a hold of me, text me and just say, I too am a scuba believer and I'd like to ask you a couple of questions, or I'd like a minute to chat. And if you'll identify yourself as such, then I'll respond. Otherwise, I'll delete your message.
All right. All right, John, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fantastic and probably the most validating conversation I've had about what I feel about entrepreneurship in any of the podcasts that I've had so far. So thank you so much for your wisdom, John.
Oh, it's really a pleasure to be with you. I really do appreciate the opportunity.
Fantastic. All right, School Believers, make sure you stay tuned for the wrap up. All right, everybody, thank you. Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was John. What's fantastic information. I hope all you new entrepreneurs out there got a little piece of something, because if you got a little piece of that, you're going to go a long ways. But there is a couple of things that I really did take away from talking to John. Embracing the power of pivoting. John's story demonstrates that pivoting and adapting to new opportunities is not a sign of failure, but rather a crucial skill in the entrepreneurial journey. Being open to changing paths can lead to unexpected success. So when we're making these changes, you never know where you're going to end up with it. That's why it's important not to be scared of these different changes that we experience in our entrepreneur adventure, and cultivating the mindset of growth and resilience. Overcoming challenges and maintaining a positive, self-reflective mindset is key to entrepreneurial success, as evidenced by John's approach. Developing the ability to see obstacles as opportunities can help you push through setbacks and reach your goals. So always reach out for those goals, no matter what kind of challenges you have out there. Don't stop. Keep moving forward. You can do it. I can. I am. I will. And I'm doing it today. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. And I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.